evening. We're coming to you live from the press box in Atlanta. Hello, everyone. I'm Ty Reynolds. Along with me, the suspects, Kenny and Jay. How are you?
All right, pretty good.
We're going to be discussing the NCAA tournament, and I would like to start off with a review of our Final Four. Kenny?
Well, I don't look like an expert now. All my Final Four are dead. I had Cal, got knocked out in the first round. Texas, who I thought would give Michigan a real good game, and then could play with Arkansas. They gave Michigan a good game, but they couldn't hold on at the end. And North Carolina and Kentucky, the two favorites, and everybody's dead for me.
Jay? You were on. Jay was on the money.
I think UConn and Arkansas and Purdue and I forgot Arizona. Yeah, Arizona was a weird pick because they were either going to get upset like right away or they're going to go the distance. They might go the distance. I know they'll get to the Final Four. Their guard play is just tremendous, and I don't think anybody in the tournament matches up with them in the backcourt.
You're right. Stoudemire and Reeves lit it up for 50 in their last game.
Yeah.
So Arizona does look like a tough team to beat. Personally, they were my team to win in the West. I thought that Arizona is going to go all the way. That was my pick from the beginning. I'll go with that. Michigan, I thought, would represent the Midwest. They're still in. My other two are out. North Carolina and Kentucky. Jay, hit on that North Carolina game.
Oh, they failed us. No, I think they were sipping the house wine because that's all they did was wine after the game. I mean, here's a team and a program that's supposed to have a lot of class, and they've gone to 13 straight Sweet 16 round. But then they get knocked out, and just because they had a hard foul, they start whining. I mean, come on, you guys, what do you think? I mean, don't you think Dean should have put the muzzle on him and said, stop that?
Yeah, well, I would like to see Dean just for once give somebody else credit instead of whining about what went wrong for his team. Can he say that these kids from Boston College came out and played a great game? They made a lot of threes. They played physical inside. The guy was going for a wide-open layup. Yeah, it was a vicious foul, but he stopped the layup.
Yeah, that's part of the game.
That's part of the game in the NCAA tournament. You don't give up layups.
Well, let's take a look at a conference breakdown here of the Sweet 16, and we're going to show a graphic. And we got Syracuse, Boston College, and Connecticut representing the Big East. They've been very impressive. In the ACC, Carolina was a disappointment for the ACC. Duke and Maryland still in. In the Big Ten, you have Purdue, Michigan, and Indiana. Indiana with a great showing against Temple. And then also from the Great Midwest, we have Jay, your Marquette team that you said would give Kentucky a hard time. Moving to the Metro, we have the Metro tournament champ Louisville, still in the West. And the Big 8 represented by two traditional rivals, Kansas and Missouri, and the Pac-10 with their lone team, Arizona.
That's got to be the worst conference, the Pac-10. I don't know what it is about them, but they don't do very well in the field of 64.
No, Arizona, they just need to get over that hump, but they may be hard to stop. In the SEC, you have the Florida Gators, a big surprise this year because you really don't have any great big-name players on that club, along with Arkansas and all the talent that Nolan Richardson has. And moving to the Missouri Valley Conference, you have the surprising Tulsa team. Jay, you really like them as well.
Yeah, they can match up with anybody. That'll be if they hadn't played Arkansas already, they would have had a chance to upset them. But I think the fact that they played earlier in the year, Arkansas will be ready, and I think their dances will end on Thursday or Friday whenever they play.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at the Cinderella teams here. Here we have Tulsa, Maryland, Marquette, and Boston College.
How can you say Marquette's a Cinderella team?
They're a 6 seed. I consider anything a 6 seed and higher as a Cinderella club. And let's look at these matchups here. Tulsa and Arkansas. Does Tulsa have any chance in this game, Kenny?
I think Tulsa had their chance to beat Arkansas earlier in the season. They took them to overtime but lost. This time Arkansas will be ready for Tulsa. Tulsa's a team that plays Arkansas style, likes to run and gun, shoot a lot of threes. They had 63 points at halftime against UCLA in that blowout. And then they were down by 12 and came back against Oklahoma State. I don't think Tulsa's going to take anybody else by surprise. Arkansas will be ready for them, and I think it will be the end of the dance for Tulsa.
What do you think, Jay?
That's what I just got through saying. If they wouldn't have played in the regular season, then Tulsa probably would have had a good shot at it. But I don't think they're physical enough, and they probably won't keep up the pace. So Kenny's right. They'll probably their run will be ended by Arkansas.
I think Arkansas is really going to have to go out there and shut down the three-point shooting. Tulsa shot something like 55% from the three-point area in the last game. Boston College, Indiana. Kenny, this game means a lot to you, being a big IU fan.
Yes, I'm an IU fan, and it's real nice how the field has opened up for Bob Knight and his injured Hoosiers. North Carolina gets bumped off by Boston College, who may be on a real emotional high. Now they have to get ready for Indiana. We all know about Indiana's injuries, but these guys will all be ready to play. Graham has the foot problem. Bailey's got more injuries than we have time to name here. Evans has played with a separated shoulder almost all year. But this team can make the three, as they showed against Temple, and if they're hitting from the outside, I think Boston College's Cinderella story will be over also.
I think they'll pound it down inside against Boston College, though. They were shooting threes against Temple because they let them have that, okay?
Yeah.
And I think that as far as Bob Knight goes, he's a great coach, and when he has time to prepare for a team, he'll beat them. But the problem with Indiana will be the next game. They only have 1 day to prepare for UConn or Florida, which I think UConn will win. But they won't have enough time to get a game plan together, and they're going to have to pretty much wing it. And then, as you said, their injuries will come into play. They also lost Wilkerson with a broken leg.
But he wasn't playing all that much. But at one point, I'd like
well,
to
it
make
gives you
off
depth,
that.
though.
Yeah, that's true. But they only had 1 day to prepare for Temple, who plays the defense they hadn't seen before, and they did a pretty good job with that. So.
Yeah.
How about depth, Kenny? How's this going to affect an Indiana club now with all the injuries? They lose a player. How's depth going to affect them?
Well, if they lose another player, they're really in trouble. But I think they can overcome the loss of Wilkerson by giving Hart a few more minutes, Steve Hart. And it'll just mean a few more minutes each for Bailey, Leary, and Pat Graham. I don't know if Pat Graham can handle a few more minutes with his feet. That might be a problem. But I don't think it will be all that much of a factor.
That's right. I think that the fact that Boston College doesn't play an up-tempo game will help Indiana. But if they get against UConn, they push the ball up the court. Those guys are going to get tired. That's when depth's going to come into play, I think.
Yeah. Well, UConn still has to get past Florida, an overachieving team all year.
I'd like to remind our viewers that this is a live call-in show. Our number is 873-6713. Jay, I should have you say that. Okay, let's move to Marquette and Duke here. Duke is always a reliable team in the Final Four. Are they going to make a return trip here?
This will determine it here, I think. Marquette, I still don't see them as a Cinderella team. They got themselves in position all year long. They got a veteran team. They got like 5 seniors. They got one of the better coaches left. O'Neal doesn't get as much credit as Coach K or Coach Knight, somebody like that. But he's a good coach, okay? And they really help out on the defensive end, which you really like in a tournament, and they bang with you, okay? That's why I've always liked the Big Ten teams in this thing, because they play such a physical style. Well, Marquette plays that style. They put those guys in off the bench, and they just bang away, okay? And I think that took Kentucky by surprise. Kentucky tried to spread the floor out on them, and it didn't work because they just pounded down inside and got that physical game going, and Kentucky was pretty much lost. They got routed.
They did. Well, that's going to happen when Kentucky shoots 1 from 11 from the three-point area in the first half, and they got behind. And like you said, Jay, a good coach, I think, is going to have an effect there.
Yeah.
Kenny, this Duke club out of the ACC, is that club well, let's just look at this conference now. Was that conference overrated this year?
Yeah,
and
I think
can
it
we
was.
see more ACC clubs eliminated?
Well, I thought the ACC was overrated all year, as having top heavy with Duke and Carolina. I thought the middle teams were not very good this year as compared to last year. Maryland, however, has surprised. They beat UMass, and they're still in it, but they would just take the place of Carolina. I only expected 2 ACC teams to be alive at this point anyway.
Well, I don't know. I think Virginia was a good team. If they had not run into Arizona, they probably would still be alive. Arizona played a great game. Virginia, they played great a matchup zone defense, and then when they had to go to a man-to-man at the end of the game, they could really shut you down. Virginia, I think, was sold short. Like I said, if they wouldn't have drawn Arizona in that second round, they'd be in the final 16 too. Duke, how can you say they're overrated? I mean, a lot of sports shows or analyses will say that they shouldn't be there. They're not as good as they were last year. They still got Coach K. They still got a good defense. They'll probably take Marquette out because of what we were talking about Bob Knight a while ago. So when Coach K has 5-6 days to prepare for a team, he's going to shut them down, okay?
Yeah.
So if Marquette can win this game 50-49, then, they'll move on. But plan on Duke really putting the clamps down on McElvain and Lagerman and all those guys.
I think Marquette doesn't have the marquee player like Duke has in Grant Hill. A lot depends on Grant Hill in this game. If he can step it up, I think Marquette will be eliminated. There's a big matchup inside. Cherokee Parks has been playing really well. I think he's an underrated player. I really do think he does a good job in the middle, and he's going up against McIlvain, who's probably the most underrated center in the country. That should be a real good matchup. Interesting to watch inside.
Okay. And our final Cinderella team, the Terrapins from Maryland, going against Michigan. And this Michigan team seems to just to find ways to win. Here it is. They were fighting for their lives against Pepperdine, and they had that close game with Kenny's team from Texas.
It's not so much they find a way to win. I think it's called poise, okay?
Yeah.
They go into the game, and they don't care if they're 10 behind or 10 up. They think they're going to win the game. They've been there so many times. These guys just think they're going to win everything, okay? And that really shows. Like you said, at the end of the Pepperdine game, they didn't panic. They just looked so relaxed to me. And Pepperdine was running all over going, oh, we might pull this big upset.
Right.
And then the same thing happened with Texas. The game got kind of close, and they just seemed to relax and play good ball.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen, I think, if they get to Arkansas. That's what they're going to have to rely on. I think they'll just blow Maryland right out.
Yeah, I think they will too.
Maryland's
I don't
relying
know.
on a couple freshmen.
Well, Michigan hasn't really blown anybody out all year, but they seem to win all the close games. You have to remember, this Fab Four, this nucleus of the Michigan team, this is their 15th tournament game coming up. They played in the finals 2 years in a row. You know, that's a lot of tournament games. It's a lot of experience, and it's a lot for another team to overcome to beat this Michigan team.
Good point, Kenny. We got a phone call. Caller, you're on the air. Hello?
Hello.
Go ahead, you're on the air.
Yeah, I've watched your show probably 6 or 7 times. 2 of you are brothers, and it's really interesting to see how you actually come up with the topics you talk about. Who invented this idea?
Okay, thanks for the phone call. Boy, who gave
But
him a
thanks-
telephone?
But thanks for watching.
We should have kept
6
them on the
or 7
line to see
times.
who we thought was brothers.
Yeah, none of us are
really?
brothers.
No.
None of us are brothers.
Oh, well. Okay, well, let's look at the traditional chokers here. We got Arizona, Syracuse, and Missouri, all from the West, all stuffed in one region. What's going to happen with these teams?
The West is interesting. It's the only bracket where the top 4 seeds have come through. You know, the 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
And it was the bracket where all the underachievers were seemingly lumped together, and they've all done well and got through. From here on, any of those 4 teams can come out of there, I think. Missouri, a team I thought was really reeling toward the end of the Big 8 conference season. They almost lost to Colorado in their conference tournament, and then did get beat by Nebraska. But they really played well against Wisconsin. Seemed to come out of their slump a little bit. It's still a dangerous team. A team that went undefeated in the regular season, so in their conference anyway.
Okay.
I think that Missouri is just they're playing over their head. They're going to get bounced out by the next team they play. Except they play Syracuse, whose free throw shooting is just horrible. And if it's a close game, that'll cost them the game.
But
so,
Jay, their free throw shooting's been great this year. They led the Big East in free throw shooting.
what was 60-some%?
They were at 69 or
Syracuse
70
and
this
Georgetown led the Big East in free throw shooting.
Yeah, it was a turnaround. This year
When
in
you
the
watch
Big East.
Syracuse play, you see them miss so many free throws at the end of the game. I guess if they're shooting 70%, then they make the first 7 and miss the last 3 because there's a big difference. When you watch the Syracuse team play, they got a couple of great players, Moten and what's the other guy's name?
Autry.
Yeah, Autry and Moten. They're all right. But here again, if it's a close game, Missouri will probably win. I think what Syracuse needs to do is come out, establish tempo, get way ahead, and then that'll be the end of Missouri. I've just never been on Missouri's bandwagon this year, even though they did go undefeated in the Big 8 conference. I really thought like that conference was weak, as shown by their showing in the tournament. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's true.
Kansas got a good coach, but I don't think they're as talented as they have been in years past.
Booker's been a pleasant surprise for Missouri. They've really been riding his shooting in the tournament. We've got another phone call. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes. Oh, how you doing today?
All right.
Okay, I like to go away from your topic just a little bit because I think it's you're not giving enough recognition to one of the best teams, college teams that's in the state of Georgia this year, and that's Life College. And I just like to put a little pearl in for them and Coach Roger Cajun, who I think is the best college coach in the state of Georgia this year. And I think if Georgia Tech was doing so good this year, I think y'all would be giving them a lot of recognition. I just like to put in a little pearl for Life College. I think they did a real terrific job this year.
Okay, great. All right, thanks for the phone call.
Yeah, they did finish second in the
Yeah, they got beat last
NAIA.
night in the final.
Yeah, And they've gone to the finals, a couple times? They've only had, 3
they've only
years
had a
of
team
basketball?
like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
They've really come a long way.
that's a good point. That's a good call.
Yeah,
we're very-
they may have the best coach in the state.
With Roger Kaiser, that's another good point.
Well, I think the fact that they have good posture probably helps them play good basketball.
I think it's the inspiration provided by Dr. Sid E. Williams. I think that's what it is.
All right, thanks for the call.
Let's look at this Louisville-Arizona game. Louisville really took advantage of the three-point shooting of Morton in their game against Minnesota. They were out of it and done, down by 13 against those guys, and Morton has lit it up despite a bad day by Rozier. Can they keep living on the edge like that?
I don't think. Rozier, this guy's got to come to play. He had 2 points. He had 2 points in the game. This guy is one of the best centers in the country, and one of the most talented. He's certainly proven to be one of the most inconsistent. I think a lot of Louisville's fortune against Arizona depends on Rozier because Arizona definitely has a better backcourt. Rozier has to even that up by dominating the middle. It's Rozier's game. If he plays big, Louisville can come out of here against Arizona. If not, they have no chance.
Jay?
I think that Minnesota just played a collapsing kind of defense and took him out of the game. I don't see Arizona doing that. So they might fare better, and he probably will get his points. Like you said, Arizona's backcourt is their strength, so they're going to play to their strength and probably let Rozier have his points.
Okay, well, we have another phone caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes. I sort of have a question that's on the subject but off the subject. I'm a big Razorback fan, but the other day I was reading in the paper concerning a comment that Nolan Richardson made that, all the stuff about the blacks coaches trying to boycott all of the games and they're wanting to get more, they want their demands met. How do you all feel concerning an article a student wrote in the paper at Arkansas school that he doesn't go out to recruit white players? How do you all feel about that? Because I noticed that most of the colleges now, more and more, the majority of the players are black. And he made a comment saying that he only recruits the best players. Now, how do you feel if a white coach was labeled that stereotype, say Bob Knight, that he doesn't go out and recruit black players? How do you all feel about that?
Jay, you want to hit on that first?
First of all, I'd have to see the context in which the article was written. I don't know if Coach Nolan said that he only recruits black players. He must have a reason for that. I know he's very into helping the inner city kids, and he's very into bringing the scholarships to the kids that wouldn't normally get a college education. Now, whether that's black or white, I don't think that's the issue, and I think that race doesn't really come into play in the NCAA tournament. You can say that Bob Knight's team has a bunch of white guys on it, but that doesn't mean he didn't recruit black players. It means that they may have gone to another college, okay? And I guess conversely, the same thing with Arkansas. We don't know whether he physically tried to recruit an all-black team or not. That's just getting inside of the guy's head. And like I said, I just don't think that race really comes into the tournament. You can't say that most of the teams are all black now, or the white players not coming into play. You just can't. Each team is separate. It's a separate, and it sometimes is based on location too. You can't take a kid from New York and say, hey, do you want to play in Ogden, Utah or something? Because if that kid's from the inner city, he'll go, I'd rather play in Atlanta or Philadelphia or somewhere like that. So a lot of this has to do with location and not so much with race.
Yeah, looking at Arkansas a couple of years ago, a significant player they had was Warren Lynn, a three-point shooter.
Three-point shooter, a white guy, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, no, I think if Nolan Richardson can get someone who can put it up from the outside, regardless of what his race is, I think he's going to go after him and after him hard.
Well, I think a bigger offender, if you want to talk about a coach that does that, is John Thompson at Georgetown, who has only had one white player on his team in the last 10 years that I can remember. It's that kid Kelly, who was a transfer, who had significant minutes, and he was terrible anyway. But I think the bigger question would be raised whether John Thompson has ever recruited a white kid. I think Kelly actually sought out Georgetown and sought out Thompson himself to ask if he could come to school and play there. Thompson didn't approach him. I think he's the one that is the one that recruits only the black players. I've seen several Arkansas players who were white in the past. So
okay, I want to thank that viewer for a phone call, and let's look at other games here. Purdue and Kansas, great matchup here.
great matchup.
Kansas has got the guard play, and they've been riding the guard play during this whole tournament. Can they stop the big dog?
Who can? I don't think anybody can. It depends on the rest of the guys on Purdue, how much help they give them. I think Purdue has proven to be more than a one-man team, however. I think Quanzo Martin can hit the three. They have a couple big guys in the middle that are physical players inside and give them some pretty good defense. This is more than a one-man team, but Kansas is so well coached. And when it comes down to here in the tournament, if it's a close game, Kansas usually finds a way to win.
When you look at this matchup, I imagine you're going to see a player maybe like Richard Scott. They're going to try and use his quickness to defend Glenn Robinson. Who do you think they're going to bring down? Because they're going to have to double team Glenn Robinson. There's no doubt about it. Jay, who do you think that Roy Williams is going to use?
I'm not so sure that he'll try. I mean, if you look at Purdue's past history, teams that try to double team him lose because they're not a one-man team. The other players on Purdue have stepped up and played good. Okay, so a smart coach is going to try and take his best defender, put him on there, on Robinson, and hope that you can hold him to like 40, 42 points. I mean, if you try to orient your whole team around stopping him, you're going to lose the game because you're going to get out of the team defense concept, and you're not going to be able to push the ball up the floor.
Okay, and looking at UConn and Florida, the first thing that stands out in my mind about this game is in Miami, where you're going to have all those Florida people down there.
Except that UConn plays in Miami in the Big East. They play Miami once a year down there, so they've played there. Florida has never played in that arena, okay? So they'll have the fans, but they're not going to be familiar with the arena. I think Florida is probably the 16th team in this field right now. I think that Penn should have taken them out. I think they don't stand a chance against the fast tempo, the pushing up the floor that UConn will do. And they got Daniel Marshall. I mean, who are they going to put on him to stop him? I just don't see Florida coming close in this game.
I disagree. I think Florida will give Connecticut a real good game.
I disagree as well. Go ahead, Kenny.
Yeah, Florida has played real consistent ball all year. They nearly upset Kentucky at Kentucky this year. They gave Arkansas a good game. This is a team that has played above their heads all year. I see no reason why they're going to stop now. Connecticut is a team that lost in the second round of the Big East tournament. It's a team that can be beaten. It's an inconsistent team aside from Marshall. They have Donnie Marshall as a real inconsistent player. The guards are inconsistent. One of them, Allen, I think, or Ollie, whichever one, was scoreless in one of the NCAA tournament games. I think this is a team that can be beat. I think Florida is a real consistent team with an underrated coach. Kruger's a great coach. I think they'll be ready for Connecticut, and I think they'll give them a real good game.
One thing that I've noticed is when you look at the Connecticut game against George Washington, outside of Daré, George Washington just shot a horrendous percentage from the field.
Yeah.
And Connecticut was tight with those guys. They barely won. I think that if they play like that anywhere close to like that against Florida, Florida's going to find a way to beat those guys with those experienced guards.
I think you're right.
Well, you guys can come back here next week and just say, well, you were right again, Jay, because Florida doesn't stand a chance. I just don't see it. They just cannot. They won't be able to stop UConn.
I think you're lucky they're not playing Marquette.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe, but Marquette showed that they can rout these SEC teams.
Okay, before I get a pick for the championship here, I want to give y'all a second to think about this. I'd like to thank our sponsors, and that is the Sports Authority, the Atlanta Knights, and Dirty Owls on Northside Drive. Kenny, I'm going to let you go first at this. Who's going to wrap this thing up and win it all?
Oh, boy. It's so wide open. But right now, of all the teams that are left, I like Arkansas.
Well, that's not a bad pick. Scotty Thurman and Corliss Williams. And that, to me, it looks like they have three big-time inside players, three big-time outside players, and they can run you to death. Jay, how do you feel about that?
I think Purdue will beat Arkansas in the final game, win the national championship.
You like that?
Yeah.
You like the big dog?
Well, it's not so much him. I mean, you know, he's a Danny Manning type player. He'll carry the team when he has to, but he's not the only thing they have.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's take a look at the schedule for television for the upcoming games this week. The West Regional in Los Angeles. We'll have Missouri and Syracuse Thursday at 8, and Arizona and Louisville at 10:30. Moving to the Midwest, you have Michigan and Maryland Friday night at 8, followed by Tulsa and Arkansas at 10:30. In the Southeast Regional in Knoxville, you have Duke and Marquette playing Thursday at 7:30, followed by Purdue and Kansas. And in the East Regional in Miami, you have those Florida Gators playing Connecticut at 7:30 Friday night, followed by Kenny's Indiana Hoosiers and Boston College at 10 o'clock. All these games will be shown on CBS. Moving to the Knights, let's touch on them a little bit. Kenny, here it is. This team looked like they had a chance to put Milwaukee away for the season just about, and they didn't get the job done.
No, they lost twice in a row to Milwaukee at home. Now they have a tough game at Milwaukee tonight. They're only a point ahead of them. It looks like the Knights are on their way to blowing the division championship. This is a big game tonight, and Milwaukee has a real hot goalie named Larry Dick. And this guy stopped 63 of 65 shots the other night against Kalamazoo. 65 shots on goal, and they win the game 4-2. So this guy's red hot. The Knights have a big test tonight at Milwaukee.
Jay?
You know, what disappointed me about the Knights is that when Milwaukee came to town, they rested Bergeron in the first game because they knew that if they lost that, they could come back and win the second game, and there wouldn't be an 8-point swing. And we all know from following sports that you got to go after the first game, and then if you win, then you can rest your goaltender. I just can't believe they did that. They kind of played into Milwaukee's hands. Milwaukee's a good team, but what we got to remember here is the Knights have 3 more games than Milwaukee. So, you know, even though they're only a point ahead, they get a chance for 6 more points. So this is a big game, and you want to stay ahead of your closest rival, but it really could come down to whether they can beat the Kansas City team or not.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the Knights also have a little bit of an advantage here. I think they have 2 games in hand as well, so we'll just have to wait and see. But we're going to wrap it up here. I'd like to thank y'all for coming out, and I'd like to thank our phone calls, and we will be here next week. See you then.